The 1960s. Some may say it was the golden years of drag racing. Actually, most people would say it was the golden age of drag racing. And this is where most of our legends would ever be brought up. Between testing and tuning to see how certain parts perform on the track and how they can deliver that to the consumer on the street. It was the testing grounds of what performance cars in the market would be. But much more than that, this is where the funny car began. Besides the argument of just how many legends were created during this era, one thing's for certain, that one of them stood out. And who is this man, you might ask? He started his story selling used cars with his brother as a kid at his parents' gas station on the corner of Grand and Spalding, my hometown, sweet home Chicago. Between breaking records as the youngest dealership owner, all the way to having the world's most successful Dodge dealership, this is a high-performance, rags-to-riches story of Norm Cross, a.k.a. Mr. Norm. Making just 3 cents per gallon pumping gas and cleaning windshields, they wanted something more. Norm and his brother Len would go out, buy cheap cars, and then flip them for a profit. The brothers broke through the late 50s when they sold a 1956 Chevrolet convertible with a V8 and a manual transmission. And since the newspaper had limited characters at the time, they squeezed in "Call Mr. Norm," which soon became his signature for the business. And with that signature, he had 25 calls by 10 a.m. the next day. Came back, there was still more missed calls, and Norm realized the car was already delivered. So he said, "Do not buy a regular car again, buy all 4 speeds." That's when performance was his business. And at 28 years old, he would be the youngest dealership owner in the country. And what Norm and his brothers sold out of that dealership would go down in history.
One call after another, "What do you have over there?" Told him what I had here. Told him it was, it was fixed, it was repaired. Good running car. They came over, the car was sold immediately. And that same morning, while the people were calling, my brother happened to call in. I said, "Buy all the sticks, all the 4 speeds, anything in performance you can get your hands on."
The 28-year-old Mr. Norm sold 35 cars his first month of opening. But then he started getting into tuning, and this is really where things take off.
All day we were advertising Mr. Norm, and it started to grow, and the name started to get around throughout the city and the automobiles, all about if you want a performance car, go see Mr. Norm.
He was the very first dealership to put a dyno in the shop, almost doubling power figures with just a little bit of simple tuning.
Standing in the back, and he came up to me, he says, "Norm, I'll put your name on my car if you give me a set of plugs and a set of seat covers." I said, "Where are you going with the name on your car?" He says, "To the drag strip." I said, "What's that?" He said, "The amphitheater. They got an 1/8 mile drag strip. 2 cars race against one another." I said, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun." So I called over to Denny, who was our parts director at that time. I said, "Give him the parts he wants." And he put up a sign on the car, and they ran Sunday afternoon. By the time we closed Sunday and Monday, we sold 5 cars off those races.
So at that point forward, Mr. Norm knew that racing was going to be his biggest sales pitch. Performance was his business, and when Mr. Norm created the supercharged car, it became one of the first funny cars in the country, and all the wins would translate to showroom sales. Just in case you don't know what a funny car is. But then Chrysler released the new Darfur 67, and Mr. Norm was going to challenge Chrysler head on to fit a big block.
Showroom, and we put a 383 in the Dart, and then we took that car to Detroit. And I remember what the head of Dodge said. We were at Hamtramck there, and he picked up a phone. And he said, "I want you engineers to come down here." So when they came down with their pipes in their hand, with their caps on. And he said, "I want you to look at this car." He said, "These are the kids from Chicago." Because we were 2 young fellas at that time. We put the 383 in the Dart, and the Chrysler did it. And it's just amazing how many of the Mopar fans have those cars today and still talk about it.
When Mr. Norm drove a big block Dart over to Dodge headquarters, they knew they were cooking up something good. And that idea sprung success in a big way. But we can't talk about the success without talking about the racing success. And that's primarily due to Gary Dyer, Mr. Norm's driver of the funny cars that were built during that time. Gary Dyer was a legend, and he supercharged all his vehicles. Ever hear of Dyer blowers? Yep, same Gary. But the successful racing career of this man is primarily due to everything that you see in Dodge performance today. Gary and Mr. Norm would pave the path forward for all performance cars, whether it be on the track with the very first funny cars of that class, or whether it be Dodge performance that we know of today. Think about it for a second. What would the NHRA be without these legends in place? Where would performance be? And why do funny cars or top fuel dragsters always run Hemmings? The answer is simple. Gary, Mr. Norm, and his brother is where it all started. When Chrysler released the Dodge Dart in the Demon trim, would it even be possible if Mr. Norm didn't visit headquarters with a Dodge Dart, with a 383, and prove to their engineers that they can get it done? The idea was insane. But without any of those ideas that visit, those kind of groundbreaking results, I'm sorry, but we wouldn't have the Hellcat Challenger, the Hellcat Charger, the SRT Demon Challenger. We wouldn't have any of these awesome, groundbreaking, screw the rules cars if it wasn't for Mr. Norm, his brother, and Gary Dyer, their driver. With all these innovative ideas that we see at the track, supercharging cars, making those wins, selling those cars, you cannot tell me that this wasn't primarily due to the actions that Mr. Norm took. And I think we all can agree when I say, on behalf of all the Dodge community, that Mr. Norm was a living legend, and without him, we would not see some of our favorite cars that we see on the street. So to you, Mr. Norm, we thank you. You're a legend, and you'll always be remembered. I'll let Mr. Norm explain from here what his core values are.
Just for anything, I love every minute of it. I meet these customers out here, and they come up to me and talk to me about the old time. It just lights me up and charges my battery. I just enjoy it. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for a Mopar fan.